So this is a bit of a bonkers idea. I thought I'd try it. It's a bit boingy though, isn't it? Is it a bit boingy? It's a bit boingy. I'll try and hold it tight. Hello there and welcome to this video. I'm here at the Jellyman's Mill, and it's just a glorious day today, so I had to get outside, and it's really warm. We're right at the end of April, and the spring has sprung, and we are definitely now moving into the summer. And this part of the mill, there's just all these little fairy things floating around in the atmosphere. And what I wanted to talk about on this video, with my special contraption, which isn't quite working, so I'm having to hold on to it, but we'll see how we get on. I wanted to talk about my favourite acoustic guitar players. I played the guitar for 45 years. All the guitarists I love are electric guitarists. Every single guitarist we speak about on this channel is an electric guitarist. And we rarely consider acoustic guitar. I haven't spoken about it that much. I own a number of acoustic guitars. I started by playing acoustic guitar. And the acoustic guitar is something which I have played for years and years and years. And that it seems to be an add-on to my guitar playing. I've never seen myself as an acoustic guitarist. I've never studied some of those sort of folk forms that you get, finger picking, although I do finger picking, I do all these things, but it's something that I suppose I see as sort of second fiddle to my electric guitar playing. But I do have my favourite acoustic guitar players, and I'm going to go through them now. Just looking into the beauty around me and just aimlessly talking to you. So we could kick off anyway. So at number 10, I want to mention Ralph Towner. Now Ralph Towner is a fantastic guitarist. He's seen as being a jazz guitarist. He plays 12-string and nylon string guitars. He is a finger picker, and he occupies his own little world. He came to prominence in the band Oregon, that sort of hippie-y, folky fusion band that came out in the early 70s. A wonderful band that I wish I knew more about, and I wish I had listened to more, but everything I've ever heard by them I have loved. He also played piano in that band, and he also, being signed to ECM, made a whole bunch of different records, including some solo guitar albums, which follow the sort of idea that Keith Jarrett pioneered on that label. But he will sit there with just a 12-string guitar and just create magic with them. There's also some classic albums I'm thinking of with Gary Burton, the Matchbox album. So he's done a whole ton of stuff. His style is absolutely unique. He is an improviser, but he can improvise in multi-dimensions, really. Number 9, I would go for Paco de Lucia. Paco de Lucia is the great flamenco guitarist that decided to expand on the form in the 1970s, becoming an absolute legend and also a little bit of a maverick as well. He got discovered by the fusion guys. Then he became a sort of superstar in the fusion world, going on to play with absolutely everybody, eventually forming the sort of power guitar trio that was the Guitar Trio that featured Al Di Meola, Paco de Lucia and John McLaughlin. These albums are like incredibly important to any acoustic guitar player. They're almost like the Bible of acoustic guitar, and what you had on that was a sort of mixture between a sort of flamenco, classical, jazz, all mixed together, Latin American music, all sorts of stuff mixed together that would then be used as vehicles for not only incredible improvisation but absolute virtuosity. Paco de Lucia is one of the most incredible guitarists And I think the thing that sets him apart from the sort of bog standard flamenco guitar players would be his improvisational chops. He seemed to be at home in most musical situations, and in the 80s actually produced some jazz fusion albums. If I turn around now, you might be able to see the river behind me, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get to it. The aforementioned guitarists on that trio were worth mentioning. So for me as acoustic guitar players, I would have to put John McLaughlin in there. Half his career has been creating acoustic guitar albums. I think this first sort of came to prominence on his My Goals Beyond album that he made in 1970. And he plays acoustic guitar throughout. On side 2, he does 2 pieces that feature soon-to-be members of the Mavish Orchestra, Billy Cobham and Jerry Goodman. But and on those he sort of pursues a sort of very Indian influenced acoustic version of Bitches Brew, I suppose. But on side 1 you get these incredible solo acoustic guitar pieces. He was doing this before Chick Corea or Keith Jarrett or any of those ECM lot had done that, and that side really does have the feel of an ECM album. It was his great acoustic statement then with the Mavish Orchestra. On most albums you would expect to hear some acoustic guitar, but obviously once the Mavish Orchestra called it a day, he then formed the incredible acoustic group Shakti, which is known for mixing jazz with Indian classical music styles. But what is also has to be mentioned is that John McLaughlin was an absolute pioneer on acoustic guitar on that album, creating his own custom-made guitar, which featured sympathetic strings that could be tuned to the raga that they were playing. And so really, Shakti was able to operate as 2 percussionists, an acoustic guitar and violin. The chordal elements being absolutely groundbreaking in that band, because the one chord that did exist was the one that was tuned into those sympathetic strings. So John McLaughlin has since gone on to explore all sorts of different areas. His early 80s albums by the band that called the Translators was a high-powered sort of weather reporty fusion band, but him on acoustic guitar again. He then returned to nylon string acoustic guitar with the incredible Live at the Royal Festival Hall, a concert that I was actually at. And I've always felt that for those critics of John McLaughlin's electric playing, which is very fast, very out of control, exciting, rocky, if you really want to understand the virtuosity of John McLaughlin, it is in his acoustic playing, which is interesting because when he first came to prominence in the 1960s as a session musician, if you look back, it was mainly acoustic guitar he was playing. So that's who I have at number 8. So if we move to number 7, I also want to give a shout out, while we're in the jazz fusion realm, to Larry Coryell. Larry Coryell has made some incredible solo acoustic guitar albums. There's a number of them. And they're very interesting indeed. And again, this is like, it's like sitting a musician down, a master musician, and just switching a tape recorder on in their head and see what happens. Larry Coryell is really underrated. Born in 1943, he emerges, you know, in the early 60s, playing with Chico Hamilton, and then goes on to play with Gary Burton. He's a very important guitarist in bringing the electric guitar into jazz and jazz fusion, and bringing in elements from country music, folk music and rock and roll and the blues. He brings all that in and really creates the sort of first real fusion between those styles. And the fact that he is not credited as being one of the main foundational artists of the jazz rock fusion is a shame. But throughout this, he also did some incredible acoustic guitar playing. When the guitar trio was formed in the late 70s with John McLaughlin and Paco de Lucia, he was the first guy to come in and do it. And I found his inputs on this, which you could hear on the Castro Marin album, but also on the Live at the Royal Albert Hall. That was a video that was made, which is called Meeting of the Spirits, which is wonderful, absolutely incredible. On that album, Larry really provides something which tempers what happened to that trio, I'm afraid, later on. Once they did Friday Night in San Francisco, I think it became a little bit of a chops fest, which is wonderful and very exhilarating, but I felt that Larry Coryell brought another energy to it. Of course, at this point in time, he was suffering with a terrible drug habit, which he eventually overcome through the help of Buddhism and Herbie Hancock. His acoustic guitar playing is really interesting, and I think that it's underappreciated. If you're interested, go and check out some of the acoustic solo albums, the live albums that he's made, and you will be quite gobsmacked. I think it's the best stuff he ever did, to be honest. Right, so we are now at number 6, aren't we? Number 6 on the list. So let's move away from the jazz now, and let's look at the folk guitarists. So in the 60s, we had that sort of folk boom, didn't we? People like Davy Graham and John Renbourn. The guitarists that I heard, which was probably down to the fact that Jimmy Page had sort of stolen his thunder when he did Black Mountainside on the first Zepp album, which of course is a reworking of Bert Jansch's White Waterside, which is fantastic. Bert Jansch for me was the guy I heard. I checked his stuff out. I had some of his early solo albums. He sang as well, and he had a very sort of depressing approach to songwriting. A few years later, around the time when I was playing with Robert Plant, I actually went to see Bert Jansch, and that concert was very influential, to see someone just walk out with an acoustic guitar, singing his songs, but also playing in a virtuoso way before the likes of Michael Hedges or John Garment come out doing that sort of thing. And of course, I was sat next to Robert, who kept elbowing me with his elbow, as you do when you elbow someone, saying, "Oh, I think this is the one we nicked," you know. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that on the channel. Yes, Bert Jansch, absolutely incredible, whose contribution to Pentangle, which is probably my favourite of the sort of English folk rock bands, because they have that jazz element. I think that is what it is with Bert Jansch. And when you go back to some of those early solo albums, they're pretty loose, actually. Pretty loose and wild, but really great stuff. That's who we've got number 6. That would be my folk guy. I wish I'd listened to more John Renbourn. And then on the American side, you've got people like Leo Kottke, you've got John Fahey. I know these players, I've listened to them, but they were never on my list. I'm going to go try and see if I can get over to here now. Now, when it comes to singer-songwriters that play acoustic guitar, I don't think anyone can really surpass Nick Drake. And on those 3 albums that Nick Drake made, I think you've got something pretty special going on, haven't you? They fence this bit off, I can't get through. So we have Brighter Later, Pink Moon, and 5 Leaves Left. 3 albums that are all as good as each other. Absolutely perfect. You have the actual quite virtuoso acoustic guitar playing of Nick Drake, coupled with his incredible songwriting. I am going to mention in this section with Nick Drake, the other guitarist who is a folk guitarist that has been hugely influential on me, is John Martin. And I don't talk enough about John Martin on this channel. But the reason is I'm not putting him on this list is because a lot of what he's done that influenced me is on electric guitar. He's transferred a sort of fingerstyle approach, which is pretty interesting. I'm going to have to head in now. I can't. I'm going to head back into Jellyman's. And of course, on some of those early albums, there's beautiful acoustic guitar playing. Maybe he should be on, really. But I'm going to put him on. We'll share it with Nick Drake, which are my 2 guys. Of course, there's people like Richard Thompson. There's a whole bunch of great, really fantastic players in that style, but just never really influenced me in that way. I'm going to head up to my studio, I think. Number 5. Acoustic guitar players. Who shall we have next on the list? I've sort of gone down sort of my favourite folk guitar players. But of course, there's the incredible American folk blues guitarist. Now, I'm going to have to go way back because the guy that pops into my mind here, who's astonishing, is the very obscure and mysterious Blind Blake.
I thought I was going to the Northland to stay. I thought I was going to the Northland to stay. South is on my mind, my blues won't go away.
Who made a number of records in the 1920s, 1930s, and often gets described as a blues guitarist, although what he's doing really is transferring ragtime onto an acoustic guitar. It's quite astonishing what this bloke can do. And you hear these multiple parts going on. Quite a shock, really. I discovered Blind Blake when I was quite young, when I was trying to get an interest and exploring all those Delta blues guys, which were very interesting, but were hard for me to understand. Of course, Charlie Patton, Robert Johnson, all these players are incredible acoustic guitar players. But the guy that astonished me was Blind Blake. So I'm going to give him a nod on this video. I'm now outside my studio, about to go in. At number 4, now I've mentioned Blind Blake, I think we've got to mention that sort of Chet Atkins approach. And for me, it's Lenny Breau. Probably one of the most astonishing acoustic guitar players that's ever lived. Lenny Breau had been brought up in the sort of... he's from Canada, but he had studied the sort of Chet Atkins type approach to playing a guitar, and he was a child prodigy. His parents ran a band, and he was sort of the star of that little band when he was a young boy, making his first records, you know, when he was barely out of his single digits. Breau then discovered Bill Evans and jazz and started to incorporate that stuff. You know, his dad famously slapped him around the face, so he left that band and then launched himself into a music career, which was ridiculously unsuccessful, despite him landing, you know, spots on TV channels and being championed by everybody. And the reason for that is because Lenny Breau was such a genius that he was a very troubled guy and tended to exist in a sort of drug haze, you know, and he never really made any proper albums except for the early albums in the late 60s that were produced by Chet Atkins. On the one that I think is the masterpiece is The Velvet Touch of Lenny Breau, which is a live album, which not only features electric guitar, but also it features some really incredible acoustic guitar where he does some finger picking, classical stuff, flamenco stuff, and at one point overdrives his acoustic guitar to create drones and explores a real strange Indian hybrid. an absolute incredible guitarist. His sort of finger harmonics, his approach to chords, his use of a 7-string guitar with a higher string and the chord voicing is quite astonishing what he can do. So I've got Lenny Breau at number 4. We're now moving into the heavy hitters. With Lenny Breau, I have to mention Tommy Emmanuel, who we all know is an incredible acoustic guitarist. Always been around. There's a whole bunch of these incredible players. Michael Hedges, as I mentioned, is another guy that was incredible, the late great Michael Hedges. There's also more recently on acoustic guitar, you've had people like John Gomm coming out, and there's been a whole bunch of acoustic guitarists on the internet who bang it and pull all these sorts of sounds out of it. And that's all come out of a sort of approach to acoustic guitar that I think Tommy Emmanuel was very important in developing. That stuff never really touched me. I've mentioned them and I think they're wonderful. I think Tommy Emmanuel is an incredible player. I love him so much. But when I was coming up, those were the acoustic guitarists I was listening to. The acoustic guitarists I tended to listen to were people like Steve Howe, that played a lot of acoustic guitar, and Yes, Martin Barr, Jethro Tull. All the prog bands would also rip out an acoustic guitar. And of course, the beautiful playing of Jimmy Page on acoustic guitar. When you think of tracks like Bronny Aya, they're beautiful in the way they're constructed, using the studio and the acoustic guitar nest. Well, this might sound an odd one, but I feel that Joni Mitchell influenced me a lot more than any of these people. When I first discovered Joni Mitchell, it was because of Jaco Pastorius and Pat Metheny, and I checked out Hejira, which didn't have any effect on me. I wasn't impressed particularly. I thought the playing was good. I didn't understand it. And then from there, I got Shadows and Light, and I liked that one more because there was some jazz playing on it. But it wasn't the Mavish Duxture or Weather Report. I didn't get the songwriting. And then at some point, I picked up a Greatest Hits album, and then I had all the early acoustic stuff. And those early acoustic albums, building up to probably Blue, which is one of the greatest albums ever made, Joni Mitchell is playing her version of folk guitar, but it's not what anyone else does. She doesn't use standard chords. It's not major and minor. She uses a lot more sus chords and clustered chords. And she'll create sort of harmonic centers out of her own strange tunings that she would have on guitar. And so the sound, as soon as I pick up an acoustic guitar, the first thing I'm going to do is to start to tune it. So I'll find a chord I like, and then I'll tune around that chord until it really is starting to ring. Because I think with the acoustic guitar, the acoustic guitar loves open strings. The electric guitar doesn't so much. Acoustic guitar loves open strings. And so in exploring open strings, you start to get into alternative tunings. It's something I've used with acoustic guitar. And I'm sure there's many guitarists who's pioneered this, but for me, it was Joni Mitchell. It was starting to realise how Joni would tune her guitars and then build the music up from that. Jimmy Page was another guitarist that I was aware was doing this as well. I did explore dadgad tuning. I actually learnt a few John Martin tunes, But I'm going to put Joni at number 3 to be a little bit contentious. She's in the list. I think she's such an important acoustic guitar player, without a doubt. Right, let's move on to number 2 and number 1. And I know who I'm going to put in on these two. And I am going to make these my number 2 and number. So this is sort of ranked now. These are really important acoustic guitarists I'm about to mention. So there's going to be 2 at number 2, but I'm going to on one of them. So I'm going for Eddie Lang and Lonnie Johnson. Now, Lonnie Johnson and Eddie Lang cut records in the 1920s when recording had just been invented, and where two acoustic guitarists played together. It was perfect for the limits of the recording at that time. And Eddie Lang and Lonnie Johnson had a whole bunch of hit records doing this, where they explored a sort of line between early American folk music and jazz and the blues. Lonnie Johnson then went on in the 1930s to become a much more regular blues player, singing some quite dark songs. But their playing on those early 1920s records really sets the scene for jazz guitar before the electric guitars emerged. And in Lonnie Johnson's case, Lonnie Johnson played single line solos. This is the first time anybody had done this, or the first time anyone had done it on record at least. Lonnie Johnson should be in the history of guitar right at the top, because he invented guitar solos, right? And when you go back to those recordings, these guitarists are magnificent. With Eddie Lang, you've sort of had this sort of Spanish-Italian approach coming in, and Eddie Lang does seem to be closer to the jazz side. But what Lonnie Johnson does is it is jazz guitar, but it's very blues infused. Really lay the groundwork for the fact that the guitar would always refer back to the blues, just that little bit more than the other instruments, perhaps. Thought I just had as I'm doing this video. And of course, this duo, along with Joe Venuti's group, had a big influence on the first major league non-American jazz group to emerge. The first that was so important that it changed the history of jazz. And this is, of course, the Hot Club of France. Now, I am going to put number one, the incredible Django Reinhardt, that was playing a Macaferri nylon strung acoustic guitar on all those classic recordings. Later on, when he starts to skirt with bebop in the late 40s, he does bring an electric guitar. It's very hard to hear the difference, to be honest. But his attack and approach and all the incredible things. Django Reinhardt, along with Charlie Christian, they are the two most important guitarists of the 20th century. They're both coming out of Eddie Lang and Lonnie Johnson. Those four lay the groundwork. Django, of course, had an approach that was absolutely unique. And with Django, we also get his personality. We get a feel for his personality. Now, I was very lucky on this channel to interview the incredible I'll scratch that. Now, of course, Django was influenced by a whole host of musicians, and then went on to influence a whole generation of guitarists, including the guitarists who put the groundworks down for rock guitar, people like Jeff Beck, people like Jimmy Page, and especially Black Sabbath with Tony Iommi, who was inspired to carry on playing the guitar after he chopped the ends of his fingers off, because, of course, Django played guitar with only 2 fingers. But Django, and this is something that came to light on this channel, Django's big influence coming up as a soloist was actually George Chisholm. And George Chisholm was a trombone player that emerged in the British jazz scene. Obviously, him working in London at that time, he would have heard George Chisholm. He was an incredible player. George Chisholm went on to be a sort of TV personality, playing and performing comedy on such shows as Play Away here in the UK in the 1970s. So people of a certain age will go, what, George Chisholm? Well, yes, this is an interesting fact to finish this video off, is that George Chisholm influenced Django Reinhardt, who in turn influenced all guitar playing, especially rock guitar. George Chisholm, that guy on Play Away. So I have gone through on this 10 of my favourite acoustic guitarists. when I arrived here, I was going to actually work on some music, but when I arrived here, it was so beautiful. I wanted to get out of the sunshine. I've also ended up back in my studio. I've never done a doubler like that, so I've ended up in a more sort of traditional place. Of course, these are just my favourite guitarists. So I haven't sit down with a pen and paper and really gone through this to really work out who the 10 greatest acoustic guitar players of all time were. And I might do that. I might do that at some point. But at least I've started the ball rolling. So if you enjoyed this bit of ball rolling I've just done, then please stick a like on it. Click subscribe. Go and click all the links down below. There's a whole ton. You can go to my Bandcamp, you can go to my Patreon, become a free member. You could go and join my Substack and listen to all the podcasts that are there, or read some of the essays I've done. Or you could go to my PayPal tip jar and put a little tip in there so I can buy myself some peanuts, because I've really got into Tesco's coated peanuts at the moment. I keep buying them. And I think, well, it's protein, so, you know, I guess it's all right, isn't it? But I don't know whether it's that good for you. But anyway, I need to keep myself going. I need to sustain myself as I get an older man. So if you want to give me a tip, or you could also become a member here, get to watch these videos before they come out and watch some exclusive content as well. A whole bunch of links. Go and check them out. You'll enjoy yourself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. But the point is when they get there, right, there seems to be a power structure there, and that seems to be the enemy. But what you find out is not that. The real evil, the heart of Star Wars' evil is not the people who are running the show. It's the Dark Lord himself, Satan, Darth Vader. And we see Darth Vader at the start. We see Darth Vader and Princess Leia. We see purity, virginity, and we see Darth Vader all in one. Hello, welcome to this video. On this video, I'm going to be trying to explain the meaning, or at least the meaning how I see, of the film Interstellar that was made in 2014, directed by Christopher Nolan.
Come in, Lancaster. Are you bailing out?
Yes, Jude, I'm bailing out, but there's a catch. I've got no parachute.
Hello, and welcome to this video. And on this video, I am going to be ranking the films of Powell and Pressburger.
The bomb must never go off.
If you want to see a brilliant example of that, go and check out Freddie Starr telling the story to Muhammad Ali.
He opens the door and there's an old lady with a blanket around her and she's shivering.